Welcome to TERRA's third Thursday podcast for the month of June 2025. Today, we will be having another strategic discussion designed to help your organization maximize your e-scrap and ITAD operations. I am your co-host, Stephen Napoli, President of TERRA, the Electronics Reuse and Recycling Alliance. For our regular consumers of these sessions, you know that we strive to be brief and to the point while providing you with useful information to help your knowledge, operations, and bottom line. As a reminder, all of our previous content is available on our website, jointerra.org. But quickly before we get started, we would like to acknowledge our new and returning members since our last session. These organizations include DMD Systems Recovery, Elite Supply Chain Solutions, EPC, Green Tech, PALCO, our co-host, Retech, S3 Recycling Solutions, SDS Logistics, and the Technology Conservation Group. Today, I am very pleased to welcome Phil Terry, the Vice President of Business Development, IT, and International Operations at PALCO. His career spans 37 years. He is very well respected in the industry and has helped his clients mitigate the uncertainties and negative impacts of tariffs for years. He led the expansion of PALCO's operations into Europe, as well as Mexico and the Asia-Pacific region. He has overseen the implementation of reverse logistics, data acquisition, management systems, you name it, he's done it. He's an active member of the Reverse Logistics Association, as well as an active member of TERRA. I know you will enjoy listening to our conversation as we discuss strategies that you can use with your customers to mitigate the impacts of tariffs. All right, everybody, welcome. Another edition of TERRA's Third Thursday. We are, as I mentioned, pleased to have Phil Terry with PALCO. We're going to be discussing tariffs. And it's always great to have, one of our certified members. Typically those of you that kind of take advantage of these sessions on a month-to-month basis know that usually our allied members are kind of focusing on topics like battery safety and data destruction best practices and other things. But we get an opportunity to have one of our own certified members kind of talk about their area of expertise. It's always something special. So with that little preamble, again, Phil Terry, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about PALCO.
Sure. So my name is Phil Terry, Vice President here at PALCO. I've spent the last 4 decades, in the deep trenches of reverse logistics and hardware recovery, as well as what we call post-sale supply chain optimization. So if you think about it, after the product's sold, service starts to happen, and that's where we really spend our focus as far as our business. And thrilled, Steve, to be here with you and talk about tariffs. It's something that's on everybody's mind day and night, seems like, depending on where our customers are at, and basically, how companies can protect their hardware lifecycle strategies and in the face of the unpredictable tariffs and the global trade turbulence that we're experiencing right now. So
this is really unprecedented too. Do you recall, and in your experience, the situation has been this kind of volatile?
Not this volatile and not this broad. It affects the entire supply chain. Occasionally there would be issues with a single country in the United States or 2 countries that we even have facilities in, but never anything that's quite this volatile or this widespread. Absolutely not. Yeah.
And for you all, you guys touch a lot of like telecom equipment and other things that could have kind of put you in international markets. So can you tell us a little bit about, PALCO and the kind of hits?
Yeah, sure. So just a little bit about PALCO, just to give you a little bit of background. So we come out of an OEM, which was Intergraph Corporation. It was headquartered in Huntsville, Alabama. PALCO is also headquartered here in Huntsville, Alabama. And the part of Intergraph that we supported was the field service, sustaining engineering, and the repair operations with the products that we developed and shipped out, and it was all bleeding edge technology. Mm-hmm. And as technology evolved, our company evolved, and eventually we decided to break that piece of that off and make that a public offering. We were a public company, And it took us about 18 months, but we made that profitable. And from that point, we wanted to divest of that because the company Intergraph, that is, was starting to go down the path of software development as opposed to supporting the hardware as well. And so through that, the acquisition occurred that PALCO was most interested in that, and they bought that division of Intergraph. That was in 2004. And since then, we went back and bought most of the campus of the Intergraph facility. We're still, again, headquartered here in Huntsville, Alabama. We were supporting about 50,000 customers in 65 countries under the OEM header. And we went back and kind of reestablished ourselves in that same footprint. So we have the headquarters here in Huntsville. We have some facilities just to the west of here that makes up about 300,000 square feet. We have facilities in El Paso, Texas, Juarez, Mexico, in the UK, outside of England, Venlo in the Netherlands, Bangalore, India, and Penang, Malaysia. And that gives us the footprint that basically where our OEMs are located. And that's who we work with. Our customer, our client base is OEMs, third party maintenance providers, and even some global repair depots. So, we have relationships with many of the contract manufacturers, with Foxconn, Jabil, Flex, and so on and so forth, to help extend the asset value, reduce cost for the companies and their clients, as well as build supply chain models that doesn't collapse the moment the tariffs change, in which we know here recently they change a lot, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully, we'll be able to share some insights, not only to the repair, the post sales infrastructure that'll give some of your listeners some breathing room and margin of protection, and ultimately some peace of mind of what's going to happen next, and be prepared for that.
Hmm. And then also, I know you all have, you do the refurbishment, you do the redeployment of assets. So I mean,
Mhm.
for potentially for some of our other certified folks that are running across the kind of equipment that you guys refurbish, potential downstream partners.
Yeah, and I think it's a great time. I think it's a great time for your membership as well, Steve, because one of the things that I want to talk about is let's face it, so tariffs have gone from being an occasional nuisance, just like what you mentioned a minute ago, to a full-on operational threat, right?
Yes.
And so it's no longer just a financial adjustment. It's disrupts. It affects timelines. It affects repair cycles, deployment plans, and even some customer SLAs. And so policies are very volatile. And the fact of the matter is they're not going to go away. They're here to stay. And so there's at least a few key points that you need to consider, when you're evaluating your hardware lifecycle strategy. And I think that's where that may come into play for some of your membership, is that the very things that they're handling are more valuable today than they were if you were just to say that you pick a switch and now that replacement switch has got a 30% tariff on it. Well, if that part can be recertified, well, you can make an argument that it's 30% more valuable, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Exactly.
and OEMs and third-party maintenance providers are all looking at these things. I have ongoing conversations with many of them, and they're looking for how do I reestablish my post-sale supply chain. So I think it's very fitting for your audience. Some of the things that we're seeing, and hopefully will be a help to them.
So like right now, like where are you with your footprint and the folks you're working with? I mean, where is the most difficult area to work in right now? Where are the highest pressures coming from?
Well, I think it's a little bit different for each customer. There's no silver bullet. When companies start to realize, do I really need to replace hardware, whether it be a telecom, a carrier, an OEM, or can I repair it or have it repaired, refurbish it or recertify that? Can I even build additional revenue streams potentially with that by re-energizing service contracts? Or simply just extend the life cycle for another 2 or 3 years. So if they're on a pitch count to replace their hardware on 24, 36 months, whatever the case may be, with not knowing what the tariffs may be 6 months from now, or even from the time they place a PO, can I extend the life 2 to 3 years with the hardware that I have? Well, you can do that if you have a partner that can recertify that, can repair that, and do that in a equal to what an OEM would do, and put a warranty on that product as well. So it gives us some alternatives, right? So at the end of the day, the answer is increasingly yes. I think we need to take a look at that, and companies are looking at that, and how they're handling their spares pool, even their decommission plans as well, to extend the life of their hardware.
So that seems like it's a bit of a unique opportunity for, us in the States. We do have 12, or we do have facilities in 12 countries, but the people that are here domestically, you know, having the ability to, keep this material in circulation within our own borders,
Yeah.
seems to be a big opportunity then.
Well, certainly you can I guess negate the tariff issue, right? You still have to have the repair, and partner with people that can recertify product OEM specifications, but just look at it as deferred capex. Okay, so a lot of the TERRA members may be in the ITAD space, or trying to manage products that's being decommissioned, even if they're doing re-commerce of that. But to their clients, I mean, it's really deferred capex. So you can get a CFO's attention pretty quick, depending on what that is. But I think you have to have the whole model, right? It's one thing to specialize in the decom world, which is important. But if they're partnering with somebody that can take that product and recertify it, well, it pushes a bigger piece of the supply chain that you can fill, and add value back to potential customers, or customers maybe you're not focused on today.
So yeah, where are some potential growth strategies then, within this space right now?
Well, I think that the one that we just mentioned, or we just talked about, is do as an ITAD, do you just continue down the path that you're going, or do you look to engage with a different type of customer maybe? So some of the customers that you may be doing that work for today, have that discussion with them. Well, how are you handling your supply chain, your spares pool, your upgrade strategies, even with your hardware within your own infrastructure, and then can you offer an extension of what you do today? And that's really what we do. We don't specialize in decom, right? And so we would look to partner with people that do that type of work. And then they know their lane, they know their business very well, and we try to stay in our lane as well. And we know that business and know that very well. So you know I would say, from an OEM perspective or a third party maintenance provider, where the opportunity may be is that you partner with a world class operation depot that can become a true strategy within your supply chain to extend that supply chain. So when you have a post sales supply chain provider, and that's what we classify ourselves as, that can test and repair, recertify, and recertify is a key word, uh,
Hmm.
warranty that hardware, or re-warranty that hardware. Then you have the power to neutralize, was the word I was looking for a while ago. You talked about getting tongue tied. That there I was. But to neutralize or
Yeah.
minimize the tariff exposure, right? And so, what do you mean by that exactly? So, when we think about a contract manufacturer, or we hear these terms, EOL, event or end of life, right? But if you think about that from the OEM's perspective, when a product goes end of life, the deployed base is at its largest point ever. They just built the last one, but the deployed base
Hmm.
is its largest point ever. But then there's an end of service, and usually that's 3 to 5 years later. Well, who's going to manage that? How are you going to continue to service that? And I think that's where that the decision on how am I going to manage tariffs longer term, that this can be a real strategy for not only for the suppliers, many of your membership, but for OEMs and TPMs, and even contract manufacturers to some degree. I give you a couple of examples. Instead of
Hmm.
re-importing more finished product and paying, 20, 30, and I'm being really kind, percent tariffs. Can you do that repair domestically with no import or no duty? The first question I typically get, because most of our clients are global, is that, yeah, but we know we sell our products around the world. Well, if you can find a solution provider that can leverage their free commercial zone, you can bring that product back from outside the United States into the free commercial zone, have the repair done, and ship it back out with zero tariffs. And so not only in the US, but also it addresses your global deployment base as well, or can do that. If you can do it
That's a very interesting workaround. I mean, what are some of, are there specific regions that really works well in? Is it Europe? Is it Asia? Or is that just kind of a global
I think
opportunity?
it really depends on the individual company strategy that they have today. So, like a lot of our clients, they're global, and we have global repair, sustaining engineering type facilities. So, Asia, for example, in Penang, we support 41 countries. So it probably wouldn't make sense for them to ship that all the way back to us because they can use our regional repair center. But there are some
Hmm.
cases that the technology may not exist, or the OEM chose not to duplicate additional capital equipment, put that in Europe and put that in Mexico and put that in Asia and India
Hmm.
as well. They say, we're going to keep that in the U.S. because, and be honest, the largest part of many of those, a big part of all OEMs sales base is in the United States. So
Hmm.
if that be the case, you could still ship that product back into the U.S. And get that repaired at no duty. If you replace that and buy a new one, well, you're going to pay a tariff. Even if you bring it into a commercial zone, free commercial zone, when you relieve it or move it out of that free commercial zone to its final destination, the customer, you're going to pay a tariff, whatever it is at that time. And so, for a longer term solution, this is what that we bring to our customer base. And then even harvesting parts, I think, is has maybe got the attention a little bit more of people, and that should also be of interest to your members as
Hmm.
well. So, we even harvest parts on unrepairable returns, which creates inventory buffers for the OEM supply when it's constrained by tariff, right? So even in the case to where that we're doing the repair, but the repair components are built in China, which in many cases they are, when that part comes in, you still pay a tariff on the component part. And so if it's a $10 part and it's a 40% or 140%, you pick the country, and when you
Yeah.
pick when that happens, uh, it starts to really have an impact, or it could have a big impact, particularly if you're doing thousands, on a weekly basis per client. So, when you have unrepairable returns, you can harvest parts and build those inventory buffers. There is no tariff at all, and it gives you some options when the supply chain is either constrained, which we always have had, or tariffed, which is we've always had that too to some degree, but just probably not to this extent.
Yeah.
So again, this isn't patchwork. What we're talking about today, this isn't patchwork. This is highly engineered process, and it drives real financial results. And that's where that whether it's your clients talking to their customers, or when we're talking to our customers, that's what we walk them through the entire process. So if you can imagine, OEM has very, very smart people, they have very, very smart compliance people. So, that's not the case at all, but they're primarily focused on selling their new wares, right? Sometimes they're not so focused on how I'm supporting my field. And that's where, we come in and we come along beside them. And so, some of the takeaways from this discussion is that, so what do I do right now? So that's what we get from some of our clients. What do we do right now? Well, first, you need to audit your hardware life cycle strategy. What is that? And where's your exposure at? So are all your parts just in time can work against you now? So are you getting all your parts from China? Are you harvesting parts off of defectives? Does your solution today offer that to you? Are you importing full units that could be repaired locally? So
Mhm.
I've had OEMs tell me, hey, that's a X dollar part, we're just going to replace it, just throw that away. Well, on the balance sheet you throw one away, right? And if it's under warranty anyway, so that cost directly goes to the bottom line. So let's just say it's a $200 part, so it's $200. Then I'm going to replace it with another $200 part. Now I got $400. And if I had to pay a tariff on that, well, you can just do the math.
Yeah.
So it starts to make a little bit more sense, particularly in scale. So what is my exposure? Are you importing full units and just swapping them out as opposed to doing a repair function? And then are you trashing assets that could be refreshed or harvested? And even if you were to say, well, the tier one clients, they're not going to go down that path. They're going to do something else. They're going to move their operations to Mexico or to India. Well, they may, but I don't know what the future for that holds, in the
And that's
future.
going to take time.
It takes time for sure, and I can tell you just in Mexico because we're there, the compensation for just for labor, which is still less than what it is in the U.S., but it's exponentially increased over the last 4 years, uh, hundreds of percent. So, are you trashing assets that could be refreshed or potentially harvested? So that's first. Second, you need to redefine what EOL and EOS is, right? So a lot of times when we talk about that on the EOL, what's the last time that it's built? But on the EOS side, service contracts are tied to that. And a lot of
Mhm.
times, because we were before we were PALCO, we were an OEM, is we didn't rewrite service contracts or refresh those service contracts because we didn't have the spare parts to support those. But with a strategy to harvest parts, and then a lot of times at the end of the build, the contract manufacturer has E&O. If they move those to a partner like us, then we may help you to be able to re-energize those service contracts for an extended period of time. And so that makes a lot of sense, as well as
Oh yeah.
in some cases it builds new revenue streams for the customer. And then even out of warranty. I mean, I think that our OEM clients, customers, are more interested in doing out of warranty repair now. It's out of warranty, but you're the same guy that does my repair for in warranty or recertifies my in warranty product. Can you continue to support me from a repair perspective? And in most cases, we do that with an understanding and an agreement with the OEM. We're not out making deals without our clients' understanding or some type of agreement. But there's a lot of stuff that's been decommed that there is nobody looking over that. They've chose that this is the end of the road for that. And there's not a lot of criteria that's required for us to offer that repair service. And third, I would say from an OEM's perspective, third party maintenance perspective, and even some of your clients, you need to partner with a supplier that can help you develop a global service deployment strategy, whether it be maps of that strategy or at least strategically stocking that, where they
Hmm.
can support and recommend optimized methodologies and not just be a transactional supplier, but somebody that can bring methodologies. And to tariffs is one thing, but there's many. And then someone that can provide consistent global processes to assure supply chain predictability. And that's a mouthful, but
That's key.
let me restate it: is that OEMs want that the global processes to be consistent and assure their supply chain predictability. That's gold to them. If you have to do FA and failure trending, by continent, And you start keeping failure data in silos, it becomes very, very difficult to really understand, what is my AFFR, MTBF of the products that I'm putting out in the field, and it's certainly going to be a cost. So those are just a couple of things that, to consider. And I'll just
Right.
stop. I've chatted a lot. So what other questions did you have? And if not, I'll kind of close it out.
Well, no, it's, what strikes me is, I'm kind of thinking of that old political adage that, y- the don't let a crisis go, unattended or
Sure,
or
sure,
unsupported. I mean, this is obviously an opportunity for our members that, are working with this kind of material to be proactively approaching their customers and
sure.
start to bringing them some strategies because this, as you say, this isn't going away.
Right.
It's going to be probably more chaotic over the next, several years than people want to admit.
Mhm.
Um, so, starting to, get their customers to be thinking about these audits, to be thinking about how they're handling their processes, their equipment, and then starting for them to find partnerships with companies like Palco and others in the membership that might be able to help them out to be able to really take advantage of this and turn this, crisis into something that works for them, that makes them stickier with their customers.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, what we say, I think, is what you were talking about. We say where there's chaos, there's opportunity.
yeah.
And so there's plenty of that. Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, for, you mentioned a lot of the pain points of the OEM customers. I mean, is there any particular one or two that's like, if I'm going to first start having this conversation with my customers, this is where I'm going to get their attention.
Yeah, I think each customer is a little bit different, right? I mean, I'm sure you found in your own career that in some cases it's an engineering driven company, and somebody in engineering is the one that you need to speak with. Today, certainly the compliance team has got some input. CFO always has ears if it's going to save them money. Quality sometimes is an inroad. I've not seen that as much with the tariff issue. They still certainly have a big vote. Today, companies have customer experience officers, and for you to get between the OEM and their customers takes a lot of trust, and a lot of people get a vote in that. So that's probably the last one on my list. But your customers, and try to understand, with your contacts. Hey, whoever your contact is, who is it that's dealing with the tariff issues? Who's responsible for the spares or our sparing? Who's writing our service contracts? Sales sometimes gets involved in this, particularly if you can re-energize service contracts. So I think there's a lot of places to get traction, but it really aligns with your network, and where you have a voice would be the place to start. But I think that there's a lot of people looking for answers, and I think that you can open some doors. Have to be persistent, but I think you can
Hmm.
open some doors with it for sure.
So what about like little secrets, little tricks? I'm thinking, here with the relationship that we've got with China, it went, from 100 what was it, 180% tariffs or 150%, whatever it happened to be, and then a week later it's 30%.
Sure.
Do you have strategies kind of in place that if something does kind of move radically to try to take advantage of something very quick before maybe the situation changes again?
Well, we try for it not to be, tactical firefighting as best we can, because the OEMs, particularly public companies, that's a death knell for sure. So
Hmm.
most people are not looking for the overnight silver bullet. They're looking at, hey, what kind of strategy can I put in place that, regardless of what's going to happen with the tariffs, we have a fallback plan, or we have a plan, and this fills a gap, right? So if everything goes back to normal 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, or whatever, well, good. But
Hmm.
between now and then, nobody really knows. And the things that we've just covered here are realized processes that people are taking advantage of today, that we work every week. In most cases, I'm working with Asia at least 2 nights a week. and in the U.S. every day.
Mhm.
Well, how are you handling the issues with tariffs, and particularly on the reverse side, and supporting that deployed base. Again, when you think about the deployed base, they are customers, but if you don't service that well, I'm not sure you're going to sell them the next one, right?
Right.
So you can sell them the first one, and I'll sometimes I'll put this on a whiteboard. I'll say, so you're selling your sales pitch count is every 24 months. So after you sell, what happens between the first sell and the 24 months? And I usually get that look like, I'm not sure what you're asking me. Well, it's service, and if it's not done well, then you may not have that next sell. And then I think the other thing that differentiates OEMs and 3PLs is they are coming up with solutions. And well, what about being able to extend my service contracts? And what about being able to get product recertified? And what about, can I get out of warranty repair from the same vendors that are doing the in warranty repair? So I think if you're talking to OEMs, those are some of the things that may resonate with them. But nothing's going to trump your relationship with them and understanding their DNA and what makes them tick.
Yeah, I think the takeaway I'm getting here is, I mean, there's this uncertainty, whether it's this administration or another administration, it's going to be there. It's going to ebb and flow. You've got things, global situations like, up and coming wars that it affect the supply chain.
Mhm.
It just seems like these are the kind of conversations you kind of constantly have to have with your customers
Sure.
to make sure that you are prepared for whatever comes.
Mhm. And we're always listening to. We talk to supply chain experts on a regular basis, particularly on the customs side. Huntsville is just one of those places that has a lot of that type of resource, and we've been the benefactor of that. So we've certainly learned a lot as well, and we'll continue to learn. And as this continues to evolve, we'll try to keep our finger on the pulse of it.
All right. Well, just any maybe last minute takeaways you want to leave with our folks with?
Yeah, Steve, I think tariffs. We know they're unpredictable, but your response doesn't have to be right. And I think that you need to
That's perfect.
be working, looking back through your customer base, and even those, just give them a call. Say, how's this affecting you? Is there a way for us to participate? But I think that's the ultimate takeaway is that the tariffs, supply chains, they're unpredictable, but our response and our client's response, they don't have to be. So, we're working harder than ever. I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I do think that there are real opportunities to provide real solutions. And we need to take this opportunity to try to capitalize on that.
Agreed. So everybody, get out there, get your customers to do audits, you get them to look at their end of life, strategies, and then make partnerships with the people that, you do business with and the people that are in our network. So Phil, thank you very much for sharing your expertise on this. I mean, it's a topic we've been talking about doing internally for some time. It was so unpredictable that we were like, should we just wait? But I appreciate you kind of jumping on this with our cancellation that we had for this month's session to jump on this real fast and get this done. This was terrific. I know it would be very formative to our members, and really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thanks you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.